ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I'm Nick McDaniel. He's Myron Fancher. How the heck are you, buddy?
That's not a good question. How are you?
I'm good. Can't complain, man.
Today's episode is brought to you by Tussin and all the other medications we are taking.
Yeah, exactly, man. So you can tell both of our voices are a little shaky today. But hey, look, man. Before we get started, as you probably saw, it's been over a week. You know how our tapings fall and everything. But we last week we all experienced the loss of Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster, the devil himself. And I wanted to take a minute because first I'll let you start. Like, what is it for you, losing Kevin Sullivan, and kind of how that affected you and everything this past week?
Well, I actually had a very weird experience last night. I was watching Who Killed WCW and listening to Kevin's talk about how he booked things and how he set things up for Goldberg and things like that. And I didn't even know how much that man contributed to a lot of the backstage stuff. I knew he was back there. But as a child, Kevin terrified me. He was the baddest of the bad. During the Satanic Panic, he was Satan himself. That was evil. That was a heel. He was the heel. Dan Bynum was saying on a post I had made that he was the ultimate heel. How I don't know many people that could be in that category.
He just embraced it.
Yeah.
You took it in, and it's kind of full circle to go from. So like my story with it's funny in a weird way to say this, right? So everybody knows Dusty Rhodes is my favorite wrestler. Always has been in my entire life. The crazy thing is, if Dusty's my ultimate babyface, well, there is no ultimate babyface without the ultimate villain. And I know most people, and especially later generations, they associate Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. I do not. I grew up a kid in Florida for a long time, so for me, it was Dusty Rhodes versus Kevin Sullivan, and to me, Kevin Sullivan was like the ultimate heel, like you said, because who else embraces a darkness like the devil and the satanic stuff with the purple haze and and all the stuff that he had. But to go from even that to it's kind of crazy. He was the villain of Dusty's story for so long for me. Then to jump forward in time to where, he took over. He's essentially the head booker for WCW during their peak. And a lot of people, now we all know that, right? Everybody's aware, hey, who the booker was during the NWO run. It was Kevin Sullivan, blah, blah, blah. He was head of creative as in general. And the influence and that he had, booking heat, like that was his thing. Eric Bischoff always says, Kevin Sullivan booked heat better than anybody. Like that was his thing. It's just heat. So then we jump forward to all this time. He was the ultimate villain in my childhood. Then he's like he's the creative head of the table at the time when the NWO's at their peak. And then things flip on a random email that I send into a podcast on a show years before we were even doing ours. Kevin Sullivan's a big comic book guy. Some people don't know that. Some people do. And, and I emailed him a question about comic books when he was doing the podcast with Court Bauer and MSL. To the point that one year I'm at WrestleCade and I actually asked him about it. He's like, oh, yeah, you're collecting. He remembered the question. And he was like, so we start going back about comic books to go, the beginning of my childhood is this guy's the ultimate, satanic villain, to the day where I'm standing in a convention center talking to him about comic books. Like that's kind of the dichotomy of me with Kevin Sullivan. And that's why that's such a big thing in my life that, Kevin Sullivan, to go from one extreme to the other. And it's kind of cool that with all these podcasts that are out there that, Tony Schiavone's, Eric Bischoff's, Jeff Jarrett's, etc., that they're all giving him his flowers and all the credit for all the things he did over time, which is really, really cool. in my thing. So anyway.
Yeah, I'm all Clint. There's my autograph. I got it at that very convention you were talking about. God, people, you got to get to WrestleCade. I'm telling you, get out there and meet your heroes, because they'll be gone one day.
Yeah. So look, on a brighter note, man, look, I thought about doing something over on our channel on Patreon and YouTube, patreon.com/tappedoutpod, on our YouTube channel. Of course, you can become a member there. Go to the page, like the page, subscribe to the page, turn your notifications on. Because look, like this week, things have rattled around. The schedule changed a little bit. So that schedule is, might bounce around from time to time where shows release a little bit different. But let me put it this way. How can I put it? So I think going forward, the Tapped In show is going to record on Tuesdays, drop on Wednesdays. We'll record on Wednesdays, drop on Thursdays. This week is obviously the new format where we shook it up a little bit about covering indie and then us promoting the indie shows the upcoming week. This is kind of a new thing. But look, that's why you got to. That's what we tell you. You got to become a member so you're always in the loop on what's going on and get that extra bonus content as well as getting it early. But we appreciate all the support, man. And look, by the way, we appreciate you guys sending in your questions every week because it is making our job easier. So look, but if you do want to make sure you catch all the indie action, make sure that that's at the end of the show we will go diving into that. But before we dive into that, let's jump into the questions, man.
Yes, got a great question here. Our friend Chris from Dayton, Ohio. What do you guys think Raw pulled such good numbers on just one regular episode? That would be the episode after Smackdown, which is almost quite like the episode after WrestleMania, which was run on Sci-Fi because the Olympics were on USA. And Sci-Fi was the #1 network that night against the Olympics, which I didn't watch a single piece of. Not for a political statement or anything going on. I just didn't care.
I watched some. I mean, I'm a big, like some of the basketball, and there's some of the events that I think are kind of cool. Don't get me wrong. But here's the crazy thing. Let's backpedal up because me and you had a little back and forth on Messenger about how crazy was it. Like, let me preface this with a question. Does it say so much about how hot they are that they literally moved to another channel? They moved to Sci-Fi. And this is not a knock on AEW. It's going to sound like it for a second, but it's not. When they move days or they move times or they move channels, sometimes it's just a massive blow to the viewership. And here's why I'm saying it's not a detriment or it's not an indictment of them. That's normally the history. Like when SmackDown goes to Fox Sports 1, dude, it is brutally rough on the ratings for SmackDown. But for them to go to USA to Sci-Fi felt like it barely put a ding in the viewership. The first week it was a little bit more. Second week, not so much. But it was just, man, how crazy is it? Are they that hot that it just didn't matter?
Well, it was great. It was a great time to do it around a giant pay-per-view like that, where there were so many loose ends and so many things working out. Like, think about it, folks. They didn't have enough time. This is an example because I know SmackDown was all on its usual channel, but there were so many storylines coming out that it took 2 weeks of SmackDown to get to them all. They still haven't finished up. They still were stretching things out on Raw last night from the Sami Zayn and Braun Breaker rematch. They did this perfectly. They set all this up. They're hot. How do you get hotter?
I don't know that they can get any hotter. But they definitely, like said, when that rating came, or the viewership, and look, I get it, guys. We're not, we've always talked about, we're not, this is one of those things where we're like, the number isn't the story to a degree. It's that 3-week trend that they had across Sci-Fi back to USA that was just impressive as a trend, more so than, like, I'm not hung up on the fact that they did 1.9 or whatever it was, across that was their average, whatever. None of that. Okay, let me back up. That doesn't matter because it's part of the story. But it's just like, it was just, to me, it's extremely wild that they did that successful.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because look, let's be honest, it was just another Raw, right? It wasn't anything special. There wasn't anything on that card that made you go like, I have to watch.
It was just a show after a pay-per-view. I mean, there wasn't an exclusive match or anything. It was just the angles.
I mean, let me ask you this. Do you think it was because for 2 weeks they were on Sci-Fi? Was there that, because the first, I think Sci-Fi was like 1.5 or something. The next one was 1.7. And then, so when we're back to USA, was there a base of that audience that just felt like for 2 weeks they hadn't caught up because they didn't go watch it on Sci-Fi? They were watching the Olympics, or they were watching, they just didn't realize, and they didn't make the move with it to Sci-Fi. So all of those people came rushing back, and that's how you spike that number.
We'll see. Because
Smackdown wasn't that. I mean, it was what, 2-2?
Yeah.
And it was head-to-head with the Olympics, and it wasn't. I guess one of the narratives that's out there right now, and I don't want to talk about too long, is the damage that the Olympics did to AEW and to WWE. It did ding WWE to some degree, but it didn't seem that it hurt it as bad as it did AEW. So my question, tappedoutpod@gmail.com, is it because the stories in WWE, and I'm asking, I'm not stating, are the stories in WWE that more compelling at the moment that you watched anyway versus you felt like you didn't have to watch? You could go watch the Olympics in AEW because it wasn't as compelling at the moment. That's the question.
Well, I mean, look at the Olympic compelling storylines. Okay. Controversy.
Yeah.
Controversy. Yeah. Guy Schlong, breakdancer. Controversy, Schlong, breakdancer. Not interesting.
It ran social media for a couple of weeks, though.
But no sports. Nobody said this was great sports. There was no great sports. If I want to see controversy, Schlong.
Well, hold on. I think that's not true because the basketball was a great story. I mean, there was lots of, they were playing, because now the rest of the world's getting closer to closing that gap. And so the men's player and the women's won by a point. And they've won 8 straight golds, but they're down to a point. And so here's the problem. You're not into basketball. By the way, I'm not really either. But I can appreciate the fact that it's, ooh. I would tell you, in my opinion, basketball is the number 2 sport in our country now. It has surpassed baseball, in my opinion. And the numbers argue that.
I know who else is not into basketball. Warner Brothers Discovery.
Could be true.
Oh, yeah. That's safe for later, though. Sorry about that, folks. But back to our next question. Okay. Dave from Spokane, Washington. I think they have Bigfoot there. Do you guys think WWE is focusing on talent signings based on signing CM Punk, Randy Orton, LA Knight, Chad Gable? They're signing these guys to extensions, especially Orton. Orton got another 5 years, Nick. 5 years?
Somebody asked me this question, obviously, and my response was, I think they're focused on signing specific talents, not talents across the board. This is a far cry different from back when, Dolph Ziggler's like rumored to be leaving and Vince threw a ton of money at him to keep him. I think those days may be over, but there's value in every name you just rattled off.
Oh, yeah.
I think, for better or worse, here we go. Nick was probably wrong about CM Punk. He was a malcontent. He was going to implode. Blah blah blah. He looked in better shape. He looks in better shape today than he did when he came to the Rumble.
He looks happy too.
Did you see there was a YouTube video of the tryouts at SummerSlam for NXT that shot, HBK was there. They had like a lot of the Matt Bloom and a lot of, but like Baron Corbin was there kind of helping out. Like, how cool is that, right? But CM Punk's there.
Recruiting.
I mean, just helping, giving advice and, helping in the process and
not hitting.
Dare I say, I believe CM Punk potentially has a career in NXT after his in-ring stuff is over, because I think he does. Look, I've never said it goes back to like, does he have anything to offer? Sure. It's could he stay happy doing it? And who would have thunk maybe now he sees helping those young kids out that want to learn and listen, that maybe he's embracing that role. So I think there's where the value. I know they completely restructured his deal, stretched him out years, did inflate the money a little bit to help him out, because over the last year, I think he's proved himself.
Yeah.
To them.
What about Becky Lynch? She's not been re-signed. So I guess
I don't you think? And I'm going to ask you. I think hers, based on that post that she has, I think she's just, hey, I'm going to be a mom for a minute.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only way to get a vacation is to not re-sign or have Bronson Reed jump on you.
Or get hurt. Yeah, something to that effect.
I don't think he's actually hurt. I think he's the vacation.
No, yeah.
I think he's in charge of vacation.
No. Yeah. Well, Seth was banged up, and it was kind of starting to nag him again. So they just kind of given him. It was a good way to give him another break
Don't hurt
again.
our truth, though, for Christ's sake.
Hey, but here's the thing: they're going to make you care about Bronson Reed. He keeps banging up guys. He's going to make.
I'm mad at him.
Yeah.
I used to think the guy was useless. I used to keep bitching about him, and now all of a sudden I'm mad at him.
Yeah,
they got a storyline going.
So again, to answer the original question, I don't think it's a hey, let's panic and re-sign guys. By the way, this is a football move on some of them. Let's extend them, give them more money over the long haul, so it's kind of it's a win-win for everybody. And Gable, I think, was the value. They saw the value. I don't think, look, by the way, and I'm not knocking him, Chad Gable didn't make what Randy Orton got.
No.
But they probably saw the value and like, hey, we can do X, Y, Z with him. We see the value in him. So let's go ahead and sign him up and, kind of go from
he's
there.
Small Kurt Angle. That's the way I look at him. He's a smaller Kurt Angle, and he's great. Well, here's something fascinating, and we'll bring the Olympics into this again. Paul from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Why do I know that name from? With the WWE NIL deal, helping someone win a gold medal, how would you judge the program at this point? So we had an NIL signee win a gold medal in the 100-meter hurdles. So there's a lot of impressive talent getting into this deal. People who got into football and maybe got hurt and couldn't finish their careers in football. Maybe Goldberg would have been someone in this program back in the day. And when his career in the NFL wasn't finished, he could have moved on to this. Maybe somebody could come out of sports, try out and get one of these deals and not come up through the indies with bad habits, and be a trained wrestler because they're a pure athlete. Maybe they don't have the passion for wrestling, but maybe they're trainable.
Coachable.
What do you think? Coachable.
Yeah, the athletes within, and so you brought up Mark Henry's son. Look, he's going to Oklahoma. He's going to be a wrestler, I think a weightlifter, potentially football. All these things he can do. He's going to wrestle, by the way. Invest in him now, because in the long run, you've got the inside track to him. You're invested in him, by the way, for two things. The track star who won the gold. She was a track lady, I believe. They've also already said, by the way, she's probably going to be a WWE star. Because here's the thing. A lot of us, especially when it comes to the Olympic athletes they get involved with, after the Olympics, there really isn't much for you to do career-wise. Like, what are you going to, there really isn't. So that's why, you have the Bianca Belairs and of the world type of things where they could just transition. And yes, because they're brought in from scratch to be a football player, to be a track star, whatever it is, especially to be a wrestler, at the collegiate level, all the way up to the Olympic level, takes such discipline. And you have to be so with the right attitude. I think they see there's where the gold is with bringing in talents.
Yeah. Like
you said, no knock on the guys. I think they're still obviously going to look at the indies. But if you can get a guy who's like, hey, the WWE style is a thing. We've heard it a million times.
Yeah.
They would rather just get a raw piece of clay, mold you to their image, than have you out on the indies learning how to do whatever. And they're like, we don't want you doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the play. And with a gold medal winner, look, I would consider, by the way, Gable Stevenson not a bust. I think it was just he's one of the highest profile ones that they took a risk on, and it didn't pan out.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have failures to this program. They're bringing in athletes, putting them into programs, seeing how they pan out. I mean, when you watch NXT, it looks to me that Triple H is no longer signing masses of indie talents. Triple H has gotten these NIL kids, and these NIL kids are taking over NXT. And you look, and not all of them are going to pay off. There's definitely, especially with the women, not all of those women in NXT are going to pay off. They're getting them some reps. They're seeing how they're doing. There was a match last night that had two women that they had stepped in the ring for the first time two years ago. It was the first time working in ring. They came out through this program. You're going to have to throw a lot of stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But now you've got stuff to stick at the wall that's already a super athlete, somebody you don't have to push to stay in the gym, somebody you don't have to relearn stuff because you're learning it the first time.
Yeah, it's eating habits, workout habits, the dedication and all that kind of stuff. Because and I think ultimately, here's, by the way, I'm going to say a weird comment. So if you NIL 100 guys and 20 of them make it and 80 of them don't, but you help get 80 of them through college, with an NIL deal, and they that way they could make ends meet to get through college. They got their degree. Yeah. Hey, who's to say maybe one of them isn't a marketing person and ends up in the marketing department? Yeah. But also they helped 80 kids get through college. That's not a bad day at the office, and if 20 of them make it.
Right. So I don't your taxes.
Yeah. There's a lot of that to be done. So by far, I would not say, I mean, you can't say the NIL thing's been anything but a positive across the board, in my opinion.
Yeah, me too. I have to go with that 100%.
Yeah. But anyway, look, and if you look, it's a podcast world. We're sharing our opinions, sharing our thoughts. Had a young man approach me at a show asking me about, getting into the podcast, how to distribute it all. And what did I tell him, Myron? Where did I tell him to go?
Libsyn. Don't even think twice. Just go with Libsyn.
That is correct. I said, man, go over to Libsyn.com, punch in that promo code TAP, get up to a couple of months for free. And you can look, it's going to distribute it to all, like the Apple Podcast, the Spotify's, anywhere and everywhere, even to YouTube. You can do an audio podcast distributed straight from Libsyn. It's the easiest thing you're ever going to do. I promise you, Libsyn.com, use the promo code TAPPED and get up to 2 months for free.
Such a good deal. Such a good deal. But our next friend, Spencer from Lake Forest, California. This is a unique one because this was all over the wrestling news again this week. What do you guys think of MJF saying the Britt Baker situation wasn't accurate? So this is a new telling of a story. And apparently, from Britt Baker's posts, this may be the accurate telling. Mm-hmm. MJF did not charge into a women's locker room.
We talked about this literally last week when we were like, I just pushed back and I was like, we're all under the assumption that Dave Meltzer, whoever's version of the story, was accurate. Like, I didn't think the part that MJF pushed back on about, okay, yeah, so I'm one of the top guys in the company. I barged into the women's locker room and basically punched a wall, in the vicinity of these women. I'm only the champion of the company. I'm only one of the top stars in the company. And I didn't get suspended or anything. Yeah, that story sounds about right.
I tried to violently intimidate a 110-pound woman. I'm not being mass. I don't know what the word is anymore.
But here's the thing, Myron. We talked about it. Like, even then, I'm like, this story just didn't wash. And I'm like, why? I mean, why did we assume it was all true? I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, it's not 1983. Okay. This isn't,
But
the
Myron,
old
to some degree, you thought there was truth to it. Because your assumption was it was AEW, right? There's the trigger. It wasn't that we assumed all of this. It was because of the reputation of the dysfunction in the locker room, or the perceived.
Yes.
There's the key, or the perceived dysfunction in the locker room, that everybody assumed this was true.
Yeah, I did assume it was true because of the perceived dysfunction. You are correct. If you were to tell me this happened in WWE, I'm like, no, somebody would have stopped him, or this
he
never
would have been
happened
suspended
in the first place. Yeah, not Brett. He would have been suspended.
Correct. That's the part that never washed. And but anyway, so stop believing everything you hear or read.
Dirt sheets.
And look, and I always say, look, that's why I always preface this. We try to say in our opinion. When we say things, it's our opinion. The things that I know for a fact that I physically saw, that's when I will say for a fact. But otherwise, dude, it's wrestling journalism.
I really should have not been on this. My mother-in-law is visiting, and she showed me a story on some kind of Chinese clickbait about people having alcohol in their system for years. And I looked at her and said, that's clickbait. It's from China. And then I realized all the wrestling stories I'm reading are clickbait. It's from China. So watch that, folks. We're not clickbait, though. We're your finest source for information, even when they're lying. But here's the best one of all, something I worked on for quite some time. Sarah from Glendora, California. I thought Glendale was where you used to send away from pornography back when you had to mail away for it. Do you guys think all of the WB Warner Brothers Discovery turmoil helps or hurts AEW's chances of a new deal? Now, we both disagreed highly on this one. And seeing as the good people at Southern Honor Wrestling were out of peanut M&Ms, my M&M deficit is I owe you 2 bags, and might have to go in on this one again. I think it hurts them badly. You do not think it hurts them at all.
I don't say it didn't hurt. I'm just saying I don't think it hurts them as much as people. I would not go as far to say this means they're not getting a deal. I don't think it. So to that extreme, it doesn't help. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I don't know that they're 100% tied together. If that makes any sense. We had a little bit of a conversation off air about if we all as a society, the wrestling bubble, need to embrace the things that we know and the things we don't know. Stop thinking about the things we think we know. And what I mean by that is, look, Eric Bischoff brings up a great point. We don't know what's going on through the minds of the program directors of TNT, TBS, Inter, whatever. They may see a value in AEW no matter what the financial situation is. Now, do they have to come up with a deal that works for everybody? Well, yeah. Otherwise, it's not going to be a deal. But could it happen? Yeah, it still could happen. No matter. Here's the thing. Okay, yeah, they woke up one morning and they're $9 billion less valuable than they thought they were the day before. Okay.
Their stock
we'll start
has
there.
cratered since Discovery bought Warner Brothers.
Eric Bischoff somebody asked the question on his podcast that made me think. And I went back in my brain and I even Googled a little bit. Since the actual Time Warner AOL deal, so this is early 2000s, right? This is 99, 2000. That when they started, the wheels came off and they got rid of WCW, etc. Every merger since then has gotten worse and worse and worse for that conglomerate of products, of companies that have grown into, could arguably be off of Could it be? He asked the question, worst merger in the history ever, period. Not he's not even talking about he goes, look, in the entertainment world, he goes, without question, it's the worst mergers of all time. But is it the worst one, period, where this company is just, the more they grow, and I'm throwing air quotes there, the worse off they get.
Well, they're merging and acquiring stuff, but they keep putting on these small pieces and then acquiring massive debt to go along with it. I guess they called it linear assets, where when they acquire these new programs, they also acquire all of the people and the production and all these other things, and they don't thin that out.
No.
They don't thin out these, and so they get stuck with excess people and excess equipment and things like, and then they just keep glomming on this stuff, and it becomes more expensive. So reading on what I've read, and then I probably was a little warped by watching the first two episodes of Who Killed WCW. Oh, and happy belated birthday, Neil Pruitt. It was the Tuesday the 13th. Uh, he was all over that, man. Neil's such a nice guy. Honored to be able to meet him. But my take on the whole thing was that was when TBS, TNT, all that. TV wasn't that great. Mergers and things were happening. It's wrestling. Is the ad value for wrestling going to be enough to keep it on a network that's lost money? Now, your argument was if they take wrestling, sign it to a big contract, and put it on a network that's dead, it will add value to it. Now, that makes sense.
Could be. The argument was if they are going to end up selling off for parts at some point, that's one of the possibilities. Is AEW as a brand an asset to one of those channels or whatever? That, because here's the thing, you were like, well, how are they going to pay for it? I'm like, they don't have to. They sign them to a contract. If they sell the channel, the new buyer's the one on the hook for the contract if they keep it around, right? So therefore, it's like it's not a problem for them. It's create the value. There is going to be potentially, I do believe there's two questions at hand. Will they get the deal they want, or will they get a deal? That's two completely different questions.
Well, yeah.
If all it takes is one network in any form or fashion to see a value in AEW on their channel to give them a deal, that's all it takes. One, it's like when there's a player, there's players, there's free agents. You just need one team. That's all you need to sign you. They just need one. Now, is Warner Brothers Discovery in a position to where they see a value in it that they sign it? They still could be. The financial things could affect how much they can pay, but it may not change the decision that they see the value in it enough to actually sign a deal with them. So I think it hurts, but it doesn't kill it. And I think that's what people are jumping to the conclusion of. It kills it. It doesn't help, but I don't think it kills it.
See, and, after losing the NBA, they may be ready to pull out of live sports altogether.
Could be.
You can't tell. There's too many variables involved. But I just don't think they reach out to them when it's time to sign a new deal. I just don't think. I think they've waited so long because there's so many insecurities and so many unknowns, and I just don't think they're going to get the deal.
Okay.
It's just not going to happen. And we'll see between now and whenever we get an announcement. But Tony Khan's been announcing it every day, and we haven't heard anything. Whew. And our final question before we get into our next segment, Greg from Westville, Massachusetts. God, I still slur with these teeth in. Do you guys think Mercedes Moné is as bad as people are trying to act like? Yes and no is my answer, Nick. Do you agree?
Do you think she's as bad as people are making her out to be? Yeah, I do.
Yes and no.
I do. We discussed this slightly yesterday because, Heath had asked me this question on the Tapped In show, and I was like, dude, I think what we found out is there's some people that are built for this system, and the WWE, they clearly kept her within their, and they had guardrails on her. And here was the other one. I think we have had this conversation, but I will put it to you this way. Heath didn't think she was as good of a wrestler as everybody thinks she is. The question became, did she look as good as she was because she was always in the ring with somebody like Charlotte, Becky, Bayley? There's lots of talents that she was in the ring with, because how many times did we see her have a match and we were like, oh, that wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be?
Well, that's fair. Or are we at a stage in this whole thing as wrestling fans where maybe we don't care if they're that good a wrestler individually, as long as they can be part of a great match.
It, the problem with her, Myron, she's getting the shit because her promos are atrocious.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. The promos are her weakness, and as you were calling her the other day, a system quarterback, where they can plug her into something. If I'm not mistaken, from my knowledge of what you were saying, they can plug her into something, and she can thrive. But you take her out, like a college quarterback being drafted and being a national champion and going to the NFL and washing out because they can't play in the system they get drafted into.
Did she benefit from the 4 scripted promos?
Yes.
Because they can't, that's what I meant by they put a guardrails on her to say don't, because when she goes out there now and she can kind of do kind of whatever, she's zigging and zagging, and then it's like it's not connecting. And, God bless her, like we love Camille. Yeah. And it's like they were going to put her with Mercedes to give her a rub. And I'm like, dude, this is not a rub. This is like,
well,
this is not good.
The only rub she's going to get is when she turns on her. That's the biggest rub she can get, is to turn on her. And that's going to put her over, and she can become. But I don't think they're going to be willing to do that with Mone because of all the money involved. But dude, as a WB talent, she was a solid person to have. She made a lot of money in merch sales. She was the image for young women. She was an attractive talent, but legit boss. Those hand things and stuff. She regardless
but that's the
of
question, was she a creature of the machine?
It doesn't matter. But yeah,
if it does matter, if that's the question is becoming, if and this is, again, I had to say this yesterday, if she's given the creative control that they claim that Tony Khan gave her, if she's paid $5 million to be the highest paid woman on the planet, if you brought in a top writer from outside the company, to help her, whatever, dude, you better pan out. And right now, it ain't happening. So did you prematurely give her all of this thinking? Because here's the thing. There's a difference between, I'm not going to use this as an example, but giving somebody the creative control to kind of do their own thing without ever proving they actually did it, that may have been the mistake that they made. So I think at this point, I would quantify her as a bust at this point.
I hate to say it, but is this Hulk Hogan, WCW?
No, because I would make the case. Did everything go perfectly? No, but at least for the most part, Hogan proved over time he kind of did know, for the most part, like, hey, this is probably the right thing. It's probably, he had creative control and he put Goldberg over, right?
She's in the back. That doesn't work for me, brother.
I mean, or just creatively, does it not even get that far? That's the problem. Does that make sense? Does it even get that far? If she's just, her and this other lady are just writing it from jump, and it doesn't pan out, that's not a good thing, man. That's just
too much creative control.
I don't know. Well, anyway,
too much creative control.
Yeah.
On to our driving segment for Georgia Independent Wrestling. Well,
that's right, man. We call it Making the Drive. So this used to be on our Tapped In Indie show. Now, at the end of every show, our Tapped Out show every week, Myron and I are actually going to dive into where we're going to be, what's going on the indie scene all over Georgia, and some might trickle over a border here or there. Our new rule is this. If you run a show in Alabama, Tennessee, but you are a Georgia promotion, we might follow your show outside the boundaries, and you'll see what I mean when we get there. There's some fringe, but let's first dive into Phoenix Wrestling Experience. Is actually, if you're listening, depending on what day you're listening to, if you're a Patreon member, tomorrow. If you're a regular listener, it's happening tonight on Thursday night down in Macon, Georgia. It's kind of one of the first pairings we're getting with Phoenix and Wrestle America, the partnership they announced that they're going to have. They're going to have champion versus champion, the SRBC champion, Aaron Berry versus KJ Impala, who is your Wrestle America Liberty champion. Like, that's going to be kind of like the headliner of the show. But you're also going to have where you can see some of these talents bleed over a little bit, where you're going to have Sal Renaro is going to be on the card, Wrestle America staple, but Sean Legacy, Cody Fluffman, many, many more right there in Macon for Phoenix Wrestling Experience.
One, I'm intrigued by the concept of Thursday night wrestling. That's a college town night, typically. Love Sal. Sal Renard is my favorite wrestler. Sean Legacy is a great wrestler. Cody Fluffman's incredibly popular. So I think that's a good card for that particular show. But
Yeah.
Friday nights when it starts popping.
Yeah, look, the typical looks SCA right there in Royston. Their usual every single Friday, like clockwork. They're going to be there. I know they got a big show coming up,
Yeah,
but it's kind of your usual suspects there up in Royston.
I love
So
it
if you're up in
there.
that northeast corner, make sure you head out and hit those guys up. But two massive shows, massive shows Friday. Classic City Wrestling in Atlanta at West Terminal. The big match on the card, Owen Knight versus Robert Martyr. By the way, a couple weeks ago we made a comment. Well, actually last week, we made a comment about Owen Knight. He's on a record run.
Yeah.
As their champion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I've lost count. I jokingly talked to him and I said, "What is it, like 470, 480 days at this point?" And he's like, "Yeah, something like that." I mean, he's been on a heck of a run, and we had a conversation about where does he fall in the pecking order now. Because he's starting to be a top guy at a lot of places. And we always say, stop sleeping on Owen Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that time.
Yeah, definitely.
Sean Legacy, Dominic Stuckey, Dave Stage versus Austin Towers, many more. Of course, Fluffman's going to be on the card, Duncan Mitchell, on and on and on. Classic Cities look at a unique environment with the band and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're in them, that area right down there in Atlanta, make sure you check them out.
That's a good solid card. Action is going to be in Tyrone, and everybody loves action wrestling. And that card is awesome.
Yeah, look, big one there. Bobby Flacco versus Alex Kane. Bobby Flacco slowly over time has been, if you've paid any attention, especially at Action Wrestling, he's been climbing the card. He's been picking up some W's, gaining a lot of momentum, and I think a lot of big things are in the future for Bobby Flacco.
Top most interesting social media of just about anybody in independent wrestling. His journeys around are amazing. I love that. Colby Carino's amazing. Always a big fan of Lev. Buff and Fluff draws plenty of fans. Have you been watching this Darian Bingstrom guy?
Mm-hmm.
He's really talented. I like watching him. So, and that's going to bring us into our friends on Saturday. Cannot wait to get back to Monroe. I had to miss the last show. I got a special card of this.
Yeah, lots of stuff, man. Stacked top to bottom. The big headliner, the main event. It's a dogfight, no ropes, last man standing. Hunter James, Xavier Reyes. Like this thing has to end at some point, and this is the kind of match to do that. We pointed out, like when we talked about this match, Xavier Reyes cut a promo at the last show about Hunter James might be one of the best wrestlers in the state of Georgia. But the difference is this ain't a wrestling match. There's no ropes. This is a fight. And he goes, this is one area. Xavier Reyes says he has the advantage on Hunter James. So we're going to find out. And that type of environment, I can think it completely does level the playing field between those two.
Maybe even tilts it a little bit in Reyes' favor. Thankfully, this is not going to be occurring at a vape and novelty store like the last no ropes match we had, I know of in Georgia. But I'm interested in finding out who attacked CT Keys, the tag team match.
Yeah, I mean, look, Todd at the last show made an announcement. Like he was trying to hey, one last match. They were going to, so he wanted to have one last match with Judias. But, of course, Judias, tricked him in a good way. And it's like, basically, oh, yeah, we'll have one last match. Me and you versus Alexander Lev. So they're going to be in a tag match for the last time. Yeah. So that'll be kind of cool. Todd, as the ever-living proof that retirements never last.
The immortal Todd.
And, of course, I think, the other headliner on the card, Happy Madness finally gets a shot. They get their titles back versus the Approved, so that will be interesting in itself. I made a look. It's honestly the Approved's first title defense since they won these things back in May. So are they going to be a cohesive unit? Because Happy Madness is kind of an well-oiled machine wrestling all over the state, and so in my opinion, I think they got to be hands down. They've got to be the ones who are the odds-on favorites in this match.
Hopefully they're not oiling each other. But one of the interesting things, well, there's two really interesting things, but TCW is going to be back in Athens. Is that going to be at the Cali and Tito's?
No, this is at Southern Brewing. So they will be at the venue. Typically, the Monday Nightmare shows run. Turnbuckle, man, like they posted their calendar today. So if you're not following them on social media, you 1,000% need to. They are up to 3 shows some months, 4 to 5 shows some months. Stretching out here all over the place. I'm not going to give anything away, but I will tell you this. The ever popular saying of you never know who's going to show up.
Yeah.
There's not a promotion that exemplifies it more than Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. I was leaked a name a while back that if this, and I said it on when I first heard it, if this name is coming to this show at any point, I don't care if it's Athens, Stone Mountain, Buford, doesn't matter. I'm going to that show. That if it'll do that to me, I can't wait to see how others react to it. Because look, on any given Turnbuckle show, you're going to see QT Marshall, Brady Booker, Luke Sampson, Angelica Risk, Parker Lee, Warden, on and on and on. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, and by the way, Aaron Solo may show up. Just start randomly Ring of Honor, AEW talents that show up at these shows. Satnam Singh might be there, on and on and on. So it's special to begin with. And they're like, hey, Nick, but they don't announce matches. Don't care. You're going to give me names of who's going to show up. They're going to do it. It's one of the hands down one of the most fun environments and shows you'll ever go see. So check them out in Athens, Southern Brewing this weekend. Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling.
It must be a pretty big name to make you mark like that because you don't mark out it hardly at all.
Yeah.
What about this Premier All-Star in Buchanan? Buchanan's really picking up a lot of wrestling lately.
Premier is a one that I'd say keep an eye on. We discussed them a little while back, Myron, and just literally a year or so ago, they were drawing. And look, again, we talk about numbers and crowd sizes. It's not the end all. It's a metric, not the metric. Here's a trend for you. Not too long ago, they were 50, 60 people. Now they're 200, 225.
Well, that's
so
a big change.
They're growing their business. They're doing something right, and that's what we keep talking about. You got to do the right thing. And look, it's they're bringing in guys like Chip Day's on this card. Chip Day's wrestling Trevor Aon on this card. They're doing a big tag team match. Payne and Gaines, AJ Black, Zach Buchanan, by the way, absolute stud beast who I keep telling everybody, doesn't matter where you see him. If he's on a poster, pay your money and go see him because he ain't here. I almost bet within a year he ain't here.
Yeah, I'd go along with you. I'd go along with you on that.
Yeah.
And Stevie Ray Frost, a very wise man in Georgia wrestling, once told me Stevie Ray Frost was the most underappreciated talent in Georgia.
Could be. He's going to be taking on Frankie Valentine for that All-Star title. But look, other guys, Donald Jakes Ministry will be there. Murder One, Joe Black will be there. And, of course, look, Donald Jakes Ministry is running rampant all over the state of Georgia, whether it's Coastal or Premier or, AWE now, whatever. Donald Jakes Ministry's got his little fingers in everything, like it's like it's an offering plate or something. He's got his fingers in it. He's got his fingers in the offering plate of every promotion around, it feels like. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see, man.
Honestly, and I got to give him credit. He gets better every time I see him.
Mm-hmm.
I got to give him credit. He gets better. I never thought anybody besides me could grow in being full of shit every day. But Donald Jakes is getting there. I like the guy, too.
I really
like the guy.
You don't have to like his methods and his tactics, but you got to give him props and kudos for his efforts, for sure. Last but not least, Sunday, Forever Pro. This is kind of one of our twists where we kind of talk about, look, Forever Pro typically is up in that Calhoun area, but they're going to cross the border of Tennessee, go into Chattanooga. Kevin Ryan, Chris Crunk, bunch of talents that are just going to cross the border and go up into Tennessee. I tell people a lot, and I've been saying this since they've started. Kevin Ryan has made some great friendships, partnerships with some people. He's doing a lot of good things, and they're becoming one of those, the reputation for Forever Pro is like the in-ring, the action that you're going to see. They've brought in some names. They've done some really cool stuff. So follow them again. Follow them on social media. That's a big thing because as we're seeing, more promotions are going like to different cities. They're running multiple areas, so you got to follow them because you might be Forever Pro. You might be, they're in Calhoun, I can't, and I'm right across the border in Tennessee. Okay, well, now they're coming to Tennessee. Promotions like Turnbuckle, who's running all over the state, like I'd love to see them, but I live in Athens. Okay, you can see them in Athens. Oh, I'd love to see them, but I live in Beaufort. You can see them in Beaufort. Stoma, et cetera, et cetera. Social media, guys, you have got to follow your favorite promotions or just the promotions. We're tagging them most of the time in the show descriptions. Click on them and give them a follow so you can at least keep up with where they are.
Social media is the best way besides us to keep up with these shows. So, and I tell people, this has been the best crop of Georgia wrestling promotions since we've been doing this. Typically every year right after tax season, you see a bunch of people pop up, you see a bunch of shows start, and then they go away. This year, it's not even been like a tax-dependent time. It's been people starting promotions sticking around, and promotions getting stronger. Promotions that were running on 40 or 50 people a couple of years ago are now running on 200 people. Promotions are popping up like Bullpen that are hitting 500 people. It's really a good time to be a wrestling fan in Georgia, and I'm assuming crowds like this are popping up around the country too. If anyone has any information on that, please let me know. I'd be totally interested to find out.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's, lots of buzz out there. And look, I said, if I know there's a bunch of different ways you can keep up with it. One of the favorite ones, obviously, is you can join us on our YouTube channel. Go to the page, like the page, subscribe to the page, turn your notifications on. Hell, but then the important part is become a member. That is right. You can sign up so that way you get the show early. That way it's not on any delay. I post some cool stuff on there. Look, I highly recommend the Patreon page. Look, I was a big fan of YouTube for a long time, but I'm a massive fan of the Patreon page to this day, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. But I totally get it, man. Look, for now, people can still go to us. Check us out on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartMedia, Apple Podcast, anywhere and everywhere. Make sure you're subscribing on any audio podcast platform. And, if you like the show, 5-star rating review would be awesome. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Definitely.
But yeah, it's a great way to absolutely not miss anything. The audio podcast is just the two main shows every week. The YouTube and the Patreon get everything. I even put a calendar on there. As many weeks as I get it, credit to Phil Stamper, who puts that list of indie shows out. I try to put it out there every single week when I get it from him and post it. You can see all over the country because look, we're not just trying to promote Georgia. We want you to go anywhere and everywhere to see it. And look, if you are, we got California listeners, Michigan, Massachusetts, whatever. The other big plug I'd love to throw in there, check these places out. Give them got to search them on YouTube. A lot of these promotions have YouTube channels, whether, like Kraken and Coastal Empire and, on and on and on. If you hear us talking about it, you want to check them out, search them on YouTube, subscribe to their channels, watch their shows, because it helps. If you're in, I get it, I'm in Texas, I can't, buy a ticket to Coastal Empire. Well, you can watch all of their shows on YouTube.
Oh, definitely.
Help monetize their channel and absolutely help get them paid a little bit.
Yes.
So it's a great way to support them. If you'd like, if you're a true fan of indie wrestling, man, absolutely, without a doubt, make sure you're hitting them up on YouTube as well.
Definitely.
Well, man,
what a week.
Yeah, it's you're gonna adapt to that new format, man, where we're rattling through those shows.
Yeah, just run.
Yeah, it's a put the pedal to the metal on those shows, man. But anything else, man, before we take off this week?
I had such a great time at Rumblejack last Friday. Wonderful show. Like I said, I tried to sit down and rest my poor old broken ankle, but had to hop up all the time because Dylan kept running out so many surprises. Always a wonderful show. Got to see Jamie Martin of J. Martin and Company.
Well, man, hold on. Push the pause button right there. jmartinandcompany.com. Absolutely want to give him a shout out. We ran into him on Rumblejack. I had the pleasure of hanging out with him at Disruptor on Saturday. It's always a pleasure to hang out with Jamie, and his son and a friend of his son were there. We had a great time hanging out, just chilling at Disruptor. Great time for all. But jmartinandcompany.com for all your pressure washing, gutter, all your all those kind of needs, man. Hit them up. I always say you can check them out on their website, but easiest way I found, hit them up through on the Facebook page. You can send them a message. Look, if I trust them with my mother-in-law's gutters and her pressure washing and all that, I can't recommend anybody more than jmartinandcompany.com for all your pressure washing needs, whether it be residential or commercial. Without a doubt, best ones in the business.
Yep. Anybody that has a mother-in-law, you can trust Jamie with her. I did have to explain professional wrestling to him at the show. He didn't quite understand it, but he's a nice guy. He's and a very thorough pressure washer. So thanks, Jamie, for all your support.
Well, man, anything else before we get out of here this week, brother?
I'm good to go, man.
Well, what's the old saying, brother? If I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.